Hello, welcome to another episode of Uncanny Oddities from around the world. Tonight, we have a few different interesting topics, considering that we've been doing space exploration, and this week we were talking about future technology. I figured I would go a little bit deeper into some other more science fiction future technology. So, tonight, we've got a few different ideas to go through. We're going to start with lights, wipes, and beam me ups is going to be our first segment tonight, which is going to be discussing sci-fi technology from pop culture, such as Men in Black, Star Trek, and Metal Gear. Yep, we're going to do movies and video games. And for segment two, we're calling that one The Science Behind the Fiction, and we're going to get into real world analogs, stealth cloaks, laser memory erasure, and teleportation experiments in the real world. And for the after that, we're going to get into hyperspace and quantum tricks with faster than light drives, wormholes, and Alcubierre warp bubbles. So we got some interesting things tonight. And then we're going to get into weapons, defense, and control with directed energy weapons, AI satellites, orbital warfare, and brain machine interfaces. I was reading some interesting stuff about directed energy weapons earlier, but directed energy weapons are kind of a heavy topic, and I still don't understand them all that well, to be completely honest. But it's something that I'm interested in. And then the last part is going to be with ethical black holes. What happens if we can build these things? Who controls them? And should we? Well, spoiler alert. We've already built at least one black hole. Because I was reading about it. I don't remember where the article is. I can't find it right now. But there was this article I was reading about, probably about 2 years ago now. And they were saying that we actually did manage to create a very tiny black hole in a laboratory. So we got some very interesting stuff to look into tonight. Oh, we got some people in the chat. Clutch says Michael Jordan or LeBron. Thank you for coming to hang out. Thank you for the comment. We are looking into future technology tonight. So, what if the future isn't fiction? Tonight, we're flipping open the black file from teleportation pods to natural erase beams, like neural erase beams, for your neural pathways in your brain, invisibility suits to faster than light drives. And the invisibility suits are actually a real thing. They worked by refracting the light around the user, but they're so very expensive that they're highly unlikely to be used, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending on which side of the suits that you're on, you know. So, tonight we're going to talk about some of the stuff that may already exist. So, we're going to start with the Men in Black's memory wipe stick. A flash of light, your last 5 minutes, just gone, out of nowhere. Fiction, right? Well, mostly. But researchers are now studying laser guided erasure of trauma pathways in mice aimed at PTSD. But who decides what counts as damage? This could easily be militarized and weaponized. Now, the Star Trek teleporters. They're iconic, right? But did you know scientists have actually teleported particles across space using quantum entanglement? Some people argue that, they can't transport matter. Not yet. But they can transport information. The first glitch in the matrix, as it were. How much do they cost? You know what? I will look that up for you real quick. All right, let's see what we got. This source is telling me the cost of a stealth suit varies significantly. This is according to Brave AI. Depending on the type and source, a military grade Gen 6 nanophotonic refraction stealth operator suit, marketed as an invisibility suit, is priced at $12,379 and is available from Harry's Army Surplus, though it is currently back ordered. For a more practical non-military option, a tactical stealth suit designed for snipers and recon personnel is available from CP Gear for $150, with some retailers listing it at $164. And it goes on from there, but the overall price for the actual invisibility suit that refracts light around the user would be listed at approximately $12,379 and can be bought from Harry's Army Surplus. I know, Clutch, you're right. That does not sound that expensive. I mean, it's expensive to us, but like in terms of military, that's not that bad. So like okay. Thank you. Actually, thank you for asking that question because this is pretty awesome. And hi, James. Good to see you. Thank you for coming to hang out with us again tonight. But that's actually kind of cool because everything I've ever read about it said it was very expensive. But I also haven't researched it in depth since 2016. I just kind of remembered that and went with it. So they've probably updated a lot of stuff since then. But wow. Hey, you just save up for about, I don't know, save up for 10 years and you can get your own stealth suit. That would be pretty awesome. So in Metal Gear, that's, the stealth suit we were just talking about. The camo works by refracting the light around the user, like I was talking about a minute ago. But here's the problem. They have made limited cloaks using the materials to bend electromagnetic waves. Not perfect, but it's a blurry outline is all a sniper needs. But the interesting thing is that it was presented in a video game in like the early 2000s, the late 90s. And now, Clutch says in 2016, 12,000 was probably 50,000 for us today. So maybe that's why they had told me that it was very expensive back then. But even still, 50,000 would not be that much for the government, with the military budget. But what I think is so trippy is how it was being presented as science fiction in video games back in like the 80s and the early 2000s even. And then 2016 is when I found out about it on this Netflix show called The White Rabbit Project. It was kind of like a Mythbusters almost. So next up, we're going to talk about how some science fiction was just waiting for the right math. For example, with stealth technology, as we've been, focused on so far, the real metamaterials manipulate light and radar, just like the science fiction told us it would. It is used in experimental military gear and possibly black budget aircraft, such as the TR-3B. I've actually seen one of those back in February of 2024. It was kind of wild because it was just like I could actually see like a dark shape in the sky, and it was actually like, interrupting the moon. But that's a whole other thing for a whole other topic, a whole other time. Now, they also use laser-based neural disruption, which studies show light can interfere with memory in rodents. Non-invasive brain stimulation is already marketed for mood regulation. Like, I'm sure you've all seen those lights they sell online, like Amazon and stuff, where it can regulate your mood by showing all these different colors and stuff. Those are actually kind of cool. I've never used one myself, but the concept is interesting to me. Now, as far as quantum teleportation goes, information, not matter, yet, I like to focus on the yet aspect, is teleported between atoms using quantum entanglement. Now, if anyone is not aware, quantum entanglement is basically the science that defies the science. The speed of light is supposedly, the speed at which light travels, but also nothing is supposed to be able to exceed the speed of light. However, with quantum entanglement, you can have an atom or a particle of some sort way over here. You can have another one way over here on the opposite side of the galaxy, and they can communicate instantaneously. Yes, even faster than the speed of light through quantum entanglement. Even scientists don't really understand it yet, unless there was some sort of, I don't know, layer of particles within the realm that we can't exactly see, what some people call the ethos, maybe, or, whatever you want to call it, dark matter, the quantum foam. I personally have this theory that there is something within the realm or the lattice of our reality known as hyperbits. And I believe that when we think about things, our mind interacts with these hyperbits to form the reality around us. And we do have the law of attraction is scientific. Clutch says I should be a scientist, but still stay with God. Thank you, Clutch. And I actually have become religious recently, but I'm not like strict on it. I'm kind of like, not strict. I'm just kind of interested in some of the ideas make a lot of sense to me when I look at how it goes from, this religion and that religion and all scattered around. They all have the same concepts, just with different names. But these hyperbits that I'm, theorizing, I believe they have actually been discovered and proven already, but they didn't realize that they had been discovered during Project Stargate when they were doing all those ESP experiments. But I'm getting distracted with my ranting. I do that. But the quantum teleportation, getting back to that, it was first done in 1997 and has now been expanded across kilometers. So they're getting better at it. They're getting better and better at it, being able to go further and further. So I think it's only a matter of time, because if memory can be edited, then at what point does it stop being your memory? And there's some interesting things you can think about. Thank you, Clutch. For and there's just some interesting things that you can think about in terms of all this, because there's just looking at history and the stories from different cultures. There are just certain things that these different places and different cultures knew that don't make any sense, dot dot dot, unless they were true. Because how would these different people and different cultures have communicated with each other when there was no physical way to get to each other's lands? But, there's just a lot of stuff that we'll never be able to truly answer or find discoveries for, unfortunately. But that's why we're here, to try to discover as much as we can. So now we're going to go big, because interstellar travel isn't just about speed. It's about bending the rules just a little bit. Or in more alchemical terms, it's about cracking the glass. You don't need to shatter the glass completely, just crack it a little. So, there is something known as an Alcubierre drive. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It will compress space in front of it and expand behind, kind of like E equals mc squared, Einstein's theory of relativity. So, Clutch said he's definitely not to assume a gender. I apologize for that. Clutch said they are definitely subscribing to us. Thank you for that. Good to have you on board. We hope to see you around more in the future. We like to discuss interesting and uncanny topics around here. We basically just get on here and, think about our theories together. And so this reminds me of Einstein and his theory of relativity in the way that it expands space in front, well, expands space behind it and compresses space in front of it, because that is how Einstein theorized that time travel might actually be possible. So that's very interesting to consider. Now, it does need negative mass or exotic energy, which could be solved if we found out how to use dark matter or dark energy as a battery source, as we were talking about on Thursday. And there is also the theory of wormholes, which are theoretical tunnels through space-time, mathematically sound, so the math does work out, but they are dangerously unstable. Like if you are going through a wormhole and it collapses on you, well, that's not going to end well at all. So you got to find a way to keep the wormhole open just long enough for you to travel through to the other side. That's the key point that we would have to figure out in order to actually be able to use wormholes. Invincible's okay, I guess. Good to see you. Good to see more people coming out to hang out with us tonight. Thank you for showing up and thank you for commenting. So folded space is a concept used in Dune and Interstellar, and it is similar to M-theory brane collisions, BRANE. Now, would faster than light travel be a tech or a key to somewhere else entirely? So, do you think it would be like warp speed drives, like in something in Star Trek or Star Wars or something like that? Or do you think it would be more like wormholes and we would just be able to punch in some coordinates and teleport there? So, what does everyone else think? We are Invincibles. We are talking about space tonight and what sort of future tech we think we might be able to get into in the future, and how we think all that might work. So next up, we're going to talk about the weapons, defense, and control. So we're shifting gears a little bit, not transporters, not toys, but weapons. So directed energy weapons, these are a little complicated. I'm still early in the stages of researching these, but they're very interesting to think about because this is the kind of stuff that Nikola Tesla was working on during some of his last years. And we do have laser systems for missile defense. That's a real thing. They exist. And they could be scaled for space warfare. Now, if anyone knows... Oh, hold up. So Clutch says, so in theory, if phones were never created and we focused on God and science, we could find teleportation. That is actually a very interesting theory because I'm a very strong supporter of the belief that if we were not so distracted by silly things like which celebrity is dating who, which, Edward Cullen vampire versus werewolf, if we didn't have all these distractions, then I think we could be a lot further along in our space travels and our science pursuits. So that's very good that you bring that up, Clutch. Thank you for bringing that up. That's actually a thing that I think about quite often. So these laser weapons are interesting because some people claim that's what Nikola Tesla did with Tunguska, if you remember that. That was a big deal. And there's also these things called rods from God, one of the most dangerous weapons mankind has ever created. Orbital bombardment. Bombardment! Bombardment! And I'm not talking dodgeball. Tungsten rods dropped from orbit at hypersonic speeds. Fiction or quietly tested? Because we know that they've mentioned those in historical documentaries and stuff. And Clutch says we could find out so much more if we didn't focus on other silly stuff. Yes, exactly. That is exactly how I feel. Now, we also have something a little bit more modern, AI controlled satellites. And we also have something called these are semi-autonomous threat detection has already been deployed into AI controlled satellites. And to dig a little deeper into that before we go into the brain machine interfaces, these AI controlled satellites are very serious business. They're part of something called the Nuclear Communications Command and Control, the NC3. And like it or not, put regulations and sanctions on it or not, other countries have already started to implement AI into their nuclear weapon systems. And part of that is their satellites can now detect both ballistic missiles as well as nuclear missiles. And as a result of that, there are ways that they could theoretically, they haven't actually done this, but the technology is there and other nations know how to do this. They could attack ballistic missiles. They could use ballistic missiles to attack these satellites and stage a false flag event to make another nation think that they were going to be struck with a nuke. And as a result of this false flag event, they may launch a nuclear warhead in retaliation. And that would not end well. And if you've ever heard of the doomsday clock, we are currently 89 seconds to midnight, which is the closest in the history of the doomsday clock that we have ever been since we invented the doomsday clock. Clutch says, I love the thought of AI, but I'm starting to think it could be going too far, especially in like China. Most jobs are being taken over by AI. I don't want AI to take over the world, which is theoretically impossible unless programmed into their microchip. Thank you for pointing that out. I always like to remind people that I'm not denying that AI could turn out to be like Skynet and rise up and take over the world, but even if it did, it would only do so because it was coded to do so by a human. That's what I like to remind people, that AI is only as good or evil as the people that are coding it, which is why I personally advocate for less AI sanctions and restrictions. Now, not because I think that necessarily anyone should be coding AI, but because I believe that bad actors, such as terrorists and foreign countries, like you mentioned, China, and as we are well aware, North Korea is another big one. And well, I personally believe that no matter how many sanctions we impose, no matter how many restrictions we impose, they're going to continue to research and study AI regardless. So I believe that our best line of defense is to study AI and learn better ways to defend ourselves with AI faster than they can use AI to attack us. Because if we put all these restrictions and sanctions on AI and we refuse to research it and study it, and they continue to research it and study it, and they keep getting better and better, and we're left behind, it's going to be like trying to fight a modern day infantryman with an M16 or an AK-47 when you've only got like muskets and cannonballs. It's not going to end well. But that's just my personal opinion on the whole thing. Now, moving on to brain machine interfaces. DARPA's work on soldier machine neural links and Elon Musk's Neuralink is a public version of this. Now, we did talk about that a while back, and the Neuralink is actually very interesting, but also very scary. Now, it's interesting because on the one hand, they could use the neural link to let blind people see again. That's something they're actively working on. And they can use it to, let people like start moving their limbs again and stuff like that. And they're working towards, really great and amazing things with it. I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, it's also kind of scary because you're installing a microchip into your brain. Once you install a microchip into your brain, it's only a matter of time until hackers figure out how to hack it, and then they can hack into your brain and make you do inappropriate and dangerous things. Let's just leave it at that. Yes, James, transhumanism. That is exactly what it is. And you're right. Now, I think it sounds like a really cool idea as a concept, but as much as I love AI and as much as I love technology, I personally don't feel like I would get that stuff installed in my body because I would be so scared of someone trying to take control of me. Now, Clutch says, which what I'm not necessarily afraid of is there's a ton of crazy people in the world that could get a hold of AI, which they could code into the AI. Now, Clutch, that is a very serious concern, and you are 100% right to have that concern. I have about 3 terabytes of offline AI models myself that I've downloaded. So, literally, there is a website, there are websites out there. Any person can go download an AI model, and they already have bad actors such as terrorist organizations and hacker groups that have already downloaded these offline AI models. And that is exactly my argument as to why people need to learn AI as a defense, to defend themselves more than anything, because the bad actors are going to continue these. And even if we were to make AI completely illegal and impose all these sanctions, there's still not much we can do to people that already have these files and models stored offline locally on air gapped machines that never connect to the internet. So there's also that. Now, here's the problem though. Just because we can doesn't mean we should, or that we're the ones who will get to decide. So, who controls MindMod Tech? Well, I think that one's pretty obvious. I personally believe that would be in the hands of Elon Musk with the Neuralink. And, I'm not going to get into how I feel about him tonight. So, you know, and then we have to ask ourselves, should interstellar travel be open source or black op? Does it really matter? James says the genie is out of the bottle. Exactly, James. That's what I want you to understand, James. It's like, I know we disagree on AI, but I also agree with you. Like, even though I disagree with you, I still agree with you, if that makes any sense at all. I know it's complicated the way I word it, but I believe that AI can be great for the world and do great things if coded by the right people. But I also believe that you have the potential to be right, and AI could completely be evil and could bring about the apocalypse. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. I do genuinely believe AI has a potential to bring about the actual biblical apocalypse. But as I said before, I believe it's all about who codes it, which is exactly why we're living in such a dangerous world. But I'm not going to get into that whole rant. So, what I ask about space travel and aliens is, what if the reason that aliens haven't visited is because they don't trust species who can edit reality, like CRISPR? We can edit our genes. So what if they don't trust us? The future isn't ahead, it's leaking backwards into now. The only question left is, are we ready for what we're building? Like, have you ever had a sense of deja vu? Like you felt like you remembered something, and then you went back and tried to find evidence of that memory, and there's no evidence of that ever happening? I'm not talking like the Mandela effect, that too, but I'm talking like deja vu, I guess. Because some of that stuff is very interesting how our minds work, function, and operate like that. Because everything that we interpret through our minds, it's interpreted through our minds. So even our very reality is scientifically proven to be subjective, meaning that we make our own interpretation of it. Now, Clutch says, I don't like microchips at all because it says in the Bible about the mark of the beast, which is a microchip implanted in your right hand or brain, which is an unforgivable sin. I've heard about the mark of the beast, but I don't actually know very much about it, to be honest with you. I've heard that it's a thing, and it's a sign of evil during the apocalypse. And I have seen a lot of signs of the apocalypse lately. But I'm also not trying to be that person. So I kind of, try to keep that to myself for the most part. Like I try not to go on rants about it, because I know how that might look to other people. Now, I'm going to close out the final segment with my favorite part. Project Bluebeam! Science, not fiction. The tech already exists. Whether it's being used that way is the only question. So, what I'm going to propose is we're going to drop the sci-fi for a minute. Because when it comes to Project Bluebeam, the idea of a false flag alien invasion or a staged spiritual awakening using holograms and psychological manipulation, the tech is already here. That's not a theory, it's physics, military grade optics, and patented devices. Now, before I even get into this at all, I would like to immediately rant about the government. The federal government has been denying aliens since Roswell, since like the 40s. So, why now, in the last, I don't know, couple of years at the most, why recently have they decided to come out and say that they believe in aliens and they believe aliens are real? What made them change their mind after they've been hiding it for so many years? What made them change their mind? And there's starting to be a lot more videos of UFOs and stuff, I feel like, in recent times. And what better way to stage a false alien invasion than for the federal government to admit that they believe in aliens and for there to be an increase in sightings of UFOs? Because, nobody's going to believe in a false alien invasion if the federal government says that aliens aren't real. So what's the first step of Project Bluebeam even before the project even starts? For the federal government to admit they believe in aliens. Because once the federal government admits that they believe in something, the general public will be that much more likely to accept it. Clutch says it is going to be very hard for Christians during the end times because we're binging to be able to buy or sell anything that without that chip, and if you don't get the chip, you will be beheaded. Ooh, that's actually very interesting because digital ID, they said the even the Bible itself does say that many Christians will be deceived by the Antichrist, and it does say that he will, present himself as a peacekeeper or a unifier, when in reality he is the opposite. And it did also mention this, mark of the beast, as you said earlier, and the digital ID is definitely 100% evil. Now, James says they know that the veil between the world is thinning and more stuff will be seen. Gotta get ahead of it and spin it. Yes, I agree with both of you. James, that is 100% right, because here's the thing. I've already seen some of this stuff. I've already seen, and I've already, not to say too much and, like get myself locked up in the asylum or anything, but, I've had a few conversations, and I'll just leave it at that, you know. But I have seen some strange stuff in recent times. And Clutch says, but if you do get the chip, you will go to hell. Not saying all you have to do is not get the chip and you will go to heaven, but all you have to do is give your life to him and have faith. Yeah, I've heard that vague things about that, but I don't know very many details about that, Clutch. But I do believe that the digital ID is something very, very bad for us, and I want no part of it. I'm trying to stay out of that as long as I possibly can. Uh, yeah, I love you too, Clutch. Good to hang out with you too. Hope to see you again in the future. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get into the Project Bluebeam tech and the real world versions. Now, holographic projection into the sky. A lot of people are like, oh no, they couldn't do that. People would see right through that. Fact, the US military has tested plasma based holograms that appear midair and persist, not just light on a wall, but like holograms that you can like reach out and touch, holograms that you can feel. Like there's a lot going on to this. And then in 2000's defense research, 3D projection systems that can reflect off particles in the air, such as aerosol, plasma, or even chemtrails. Take your pick. Now, DARPA, Raytheon, and Lockheed Martin all have internal records on high altitude holographic technologies. Wow. It almost sounds like they can do all this. Clutch says, what is Project Bloopy? I'm going to look that up right now. Hang on one second. All right, let's see if we can find anything. Aww, I don't know. My internet search says Project Bloopy does not appear to be a formally recognized initiative. Oh, Project Bluebeam. I'm sorry. Sometimes I talk a little fast. I'm so sorry. Sometimes I speak a little fast and I don't realize what I'm talking about. That's my bad. Project Bluebeam is the idea that the federal government is going to stage a false alien invasion, and they're going to stage it in such a way that they're going to pretend it is the return of Christ, as James said, or they will have a god in the sky. A god will appear in the sky, and it will be the god of each dominant region. Buddha in the east, the typical god here in the west, or Allah in the Middle East, perhaps. And they're basically going to take all these different gods of all the different dominant religions and the different regions, and they're going to have it projected up in the sky, and it's going to have a message for everybody and they're going to have the message is basically going to be all the other religions are false. and it's going to have archaeological evidence, supposedly, to prove that all the other religions are false. They're going to start finding all these archaeological discoveries that prove all these other religions are false. And then this new thing is going to meld into one single projection that is going to become a new universal God, so that the new world order can come to power, and basically the Illuminati can form the New World Order and gain global, one single unified global government to control the entire planet. And that is formed from the Illuminati. That is basically the main concept. And Japan has already projected 3D anime idols into open air with no screens. So the conclusion, yeah, we can definitely project Jesus into the clouds, or even a fleet of alien spaceships to stage a false alien invasion. And another big concept of Project Bluebeam is normally the government is going to ask us for a power that we normally wouldn't agree to. But because of this alien invasion, we're going to be like, okay, yeah, sure, do it. Do what you got to do to help us fight off the aliens. And we're just going to agree to it. And that is the moment at which we cross the threshold and the point of no return. Because once we agree to that, we give the government too much power, and there's no taking our power back after that. And they got plans for everybody. If there's any dissenters and anybody that doesn't go along with this plan and doesn't believe in it, they'll just lock you up in mental institutions and internment camps and kill you. So, yeah. And they're also going to be using mind control devices that can project mind control frequencies through the air. And by the way, that's also a thing. We're getting into that here in a minute. So but before we get into that, we're going to talk about synthetic voice transmission. Yeah, that's right. Voice to skull. They can project voices into your skull. Long-range acoustic devices, LRAD. Focused audio beams used in crowd control. Real things. These are real things. Okay? These are no theories. These are real. U.S. Army patents from the 1970s to the 1990s for transmitting voices directly into the auditory cortex using microwave pulses. Oh, and by the way, do you have any AirPods, like Apple AirPods? Because these things actually have a patent on them that when you put them into your ear, there's a patent on the AirPods to do mind control. Here, I'll pull it up. Watch this. All right, I found it. So I'm going to share the screen. Let's see. Here it is. Right here. So look at this. Apple's revolutionary patent. AirPods for reading brain waves. Look at this. Apple has taken another visionary step by filing a groundbreaking patent for AirPods that can read your brain waves. This innovative technology, which utilizes electroencephalography, EEG, could fundamentally change the way you interact with your devices. Imagine if your headphones could read your mind and respond accordingly. From controlling music playback to monitoring your mental health. Not cool, Apple. Not cool. This vision could soon become a reality, opening up exciting possibilities for the future of the human machine interface. So, yeah, it's real. It's an actual, real patent. So Clutch says, so I heard this theory that some people might try to recreate end times by like using realistic AI to post on socials, but they're really not going to be accurate because all the stuff their goons recreate. Yeah, that sounds believable to me. I could definitely believe that. And James says, yes, make it seem like in time so the Christians won't resist. And Clutch says, I never really use AirPods because they're bad for you, but this is just a whole new level. Yeah, I know. I know. I use them because I'm like, whatever. Did not mean to say goons. You're good, Clutch. You're good. But, you know, I don't know how to word it exactly, but I just have faith that I'm going to be okay. So, anyways, yeah, I know it sounds a little weird. I know. But there is also publicly known as voice to skull or synthetic telepathy in patent language, is what we've been talking about. So, yeah, they can make you hear a voice in your head with no speaker. The government's already been working on that and has actual patents for it. Now, they also have motion manipulation via EM frequencies. That's what we were talking about a minute ago. That's what we were just talking about. So, research into ELF, extremely low frequency wave impact on brain waves and mood, actually goes back to MK Ultra. HARP and similar ionospheric heaters can, in theory, reflect ELF back down to Earth across vast distances. And real quick I'm sure everyone knows about MK Ultra by this point, the government mind control experiment. So we're just going to glaze over that, but we're going to get back into HARP for a moment. And HARP is actually very interesting because there have been multiple instances, such as an earthquake in Japan and the big earthquake in Haiti. That earthquake, interestingly enough, HARP had been directed at those locations for weeks before those earthquakes happened. And coincidentally, they just happened to try to shut down their data servers, like their not data servers, but like their resources online where they let you track the positioning of HARP. They tried to shut it down. Oh, you gotta go. Thanks for coming to hang out with us, James. Always good chatting with you. Thank you. But they did have it pointed at that, and they tried to shut down their services for recording the data when the earthquakes happened. But of course, we had the Wayback Machine, and people had recorded that stuff. Now, it's not fantasy. It was actually used in crowd pacification tests and possibly mood regulation via non-lethal psychological warfare, which means emotional control isn't science fiction. It's non-lethal weaponry. Havana syndrome, if you've heard of that. Some people believe that Havana syndrome was most likely caused by HARP, sending low ELF magnetic frequencies out to people. Now, there is also something known as touchable holograms with physical feedback. Ultra haptics, now known as Ultra Leap, uses focused sound waves to create tactile sensations in mid-air. Yeah, that's right. Physical holograms you can touch. Users can feel buttons, textures, and even people in the air. No glove, no surface. Combined with visuals like drones, as you've probably seen them do in Las Vegas with that drone show, this means a person could shake your hand and you'd feel it, even if they aren't real. So theoretically, you could hug a hologram and think it's God. So Clutch says, is it possible to fake an earthquake by shaking Earth's tectonic plates? Yes, that is essentially what HARP was doing, is it was sending frequencies at these different locations, And over time, enough of these frequencies would cause slight variations in the tectonic plates, which could cause the earthquakes. It is technically a conspiracy theory, full disclosure. It is technically a conspiracy theory, but the science is sound. The science is real. So when you hear Project Bluebeam and laugh next time, or you hear conspiracy theory and think, oh, that can't possibly be true, it's not about whether the plan exists or whether the theory is true. It's that the infrastructure exists, the technology exists, and the means are there. The code, the devices, and the systems. So I leave everyone with this final set of questions for tonight to consider. What do you think they would use this for first? A war? A fake god? Or just to test how easily we fall for the light? So now that the mask has slipped, we must ask one final question. Should we even be building this future? Thank you all for coming to hang out, and I will see you next time. This has been Uncanny Oddities, and we will be back next week with more awesome stuff to talk about. And before we go, Clutch says, oh, well, that's cool, but scary at the same time. A fake god, and it says they will in the Bible. And that's exactly what I was talking about earlier, Clutch. I have seen a lot of biblical apocalypse signs happening lately, but I'm trying not to read too much into it because I know people are always talking about that and have been my whole life. And, if you're a biblical person, then you also know that they said God will end the world, but we will not know when. Thank you. It was amazing talking to you as well, Clutch. Glad to have someone else coming to hang out with us on a regular basis, I hope. And if not, then thank you for coming to hang out this time. I will see you and everyone else next time. Thank you and have a good night.